So hi everybody, it's Professor Sparke here, and I'm joined today by Professor Ricardo Gomez from the University of Washington, where he's a professor in the Information School and where he teaches students about the use of photography in research, among other things. And Ricardo, thank you so much for joining me. And
my pleasure.
It's great to be able to turn to you for some advice. And I know you're really interested in the use of photos for storytelling, and I'm interested in the insights that you can share with students about the relationship between a photograph and a story, because you were telling me off camera about how sometimes the photograph might not be all that brilliant itself from a point of view of a kind of composition and so forth, but it nevertheless allows people to tell a powerful story. And I wondered, first of all, if you could share an example of that.
Sure.
From your work with migrants.
So in the work that I do, I use photography as a way to try to get deeper into the person's experience, of a life experience in some aspect in particular. So the purpose is not to create beautiful images. The purpose is to create images that allow people to talk about their experience.
Right.
And what I have found is that it is not really to produce images in themselves. So the end product is not the image of high photographic quality or artistic value or merit, but images that have served as a powerful vehicle to enter the experience of the person. So examples that have led me to realize that the power is in the story that the person brings and not so much in the image, are, for example, working with migrants at the US-Mexico border. I'm doing research with migrants at the border, people who are just deported or just arrived in the border wanting to cross the border. So in that liminal space of not knowing where their next meal is going to be and not knowing where they'll sleep tonight, knowing where they come from, having a dream of the place they're heading to, and yet being in that uncertain moment. So in that context, people bring pictures of the basketball court, and one of the kids was saying, "Oh, I really like playing basketball, and my feet itch because I want to play basketball, and it's been 30 days since I left my home country and I haven't played basketball, and here there is a basketball court, and the place where I'm staying, they don't have a basketball, they do have one, but it didn't have any air, and I'm really itching for playing basketball." So his message about this picture is all about the basketball.
And what was the picture of?
Of a basketball court in the background of a park. And behind the park, there is a cemetery that you can barely see. And so later that day or the next day, somebody else brings a very similar picture of the same basketball court, the same setting, the same background of the cemetery. And I make the mistake of asking, "Oh, so what is with this picture of the basketball court?" So I told you about the importance of asking open-ended questions. So I made the mistake of asking a leading question. "Well, tell me about the basketball court." And he says, "No, it's not about the basketball court, it's the cemetery." So if you look at the picture, it is not a picture of the cemetery. It's a picture of the basketball court, and in the background, really small in the back, it's a cemetery. But for this person, what it was a picture of the cemetery. And for him, the meaning was, I don't want to be an anonymous death in the desert, like the crosses I've seen in the desert, people who die in the desert, and their families have nowhere to go pay homage and remember them, because those dead people in the desert don't have a place where their family can go. And here, all these dead people in the cemetery have a place, and their family knows where they are, and they can come and honor them. And so that's why I took a picture of this cemetery, to honor the people who have a place where they rest, and unlike the anonymous death in the desert.
Wow.
So it's a very powerful story.
And both the cemetery and the basketball court are deeply humanizing, right, of this person's experience.
Yes. So I could share with you those two pictures, and you can put them side by side and see how it is, from a photography perspective, neither of them would convey the richness of the story. One of them could be more related to basketball, the other one is related to whatever's in the background, but the value of the message that is conveyed by them is in the story that the person tells about why they brought that picture to the conversation.
And now, if you were going to try and do justice to those two photographs and that underlying story with like a kind of a museum curation where you have a quotation, what would you like use as a quotation or a statement that would help viewers see the backstory?
So what I use is a direct quote from what the person says.
Yeah, okay.
And well, the direct quote depends on which language you're talking about, so it's translated. And frequently when we talk in convoluted ways. So the interviews are frequently edited for clarity and for brevity and translated. So it's a direct quote that is not extremely literal because it's abbreviated and for clarity, but honoring and respecting the words of the participant and what they saw in it.
And it would still give viewers of the two photos a much richer sense of the context.
Yes.
Right.
And in this particular case that we're talking about, neither of these pictures would win a photography contest.
Well,
they're terrible pictures, but they have great stories.
it depends how you judge the photo contest, right?
Yeah.
It makes me realize that the curation of the photography and what people put alongside the photography by way of explanation or a title or a quotation is really important.
And in the work I do, the curation is done honoring, channeling the words and the experience of the participant.
Right.
It is not my experience.
It's not your projection.
It is their experience that I'm trying to channel and capture to accompany that image.
That's very important. You told me another example of a photo at the border where the person had taken almost like an accidental photograph in their back pocket or something, but for them it ended up sort of metaphorizing the experience of the border. Do you want to talk about that?
Let me tell you about that one. So it's in that same experience of working at the border, one of the participants brought a picture that in itself was once again a picture that you would easily delete when you're looking at 10 pictures saying, oh, this was out of focus, it was taken by mistake, it's something fuzzy and in movement. And he said, no, let's talk about that one. So it's an image in which there is a shadow of a person in a hallway, and it's dark and it's out of focus and it's moved. So as a photograph, it is not great. Yeah. And yet, what this person said is, no, this picture is great because it symbol, and I'm paraphrasing. It symbolizes this moment that I'm living. I don't know where I'm heading to. It's dark. It's out of focus. It's in movement, and it expresses my feeling of this moment of transition of being at the border without knowing where I'll be tomorrow and where I'm coming from, and it's dark and uncertain. Something like that, something to that effect.
Yeah.
His words are clearer and crisper to that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a very beautiful rendition of something that could have been a picture that I, as a photographer, would have deleted from my collection for being out of focus and moved. And yet for him was the picture that he chose to talk about. Whether he took it with that purpose in mind or not is beside the point.
Yeah.
He might have taken it purposely like that. He might have taken it by mistake and then saw it and made it up on the spot. I don't care. It was a shortcut into his experience.
And it allowed him to convey that
experience. Allowed him to convey it. And I find that very powerful.
It reminds me, it's so powerful. It reminds me of Gloria Anzaldua's book, Borderlands La Frontera.
Yes.
Where she talks about, this is my world, this barbed wire borderland, that I live in it, and it's such a visceral and poetic and powerful way that she conveys her experience, and yet it's a very bleak kind of image comes to mind. She wrote that book here, by the way, in Santa Cruz. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
So I think what you're describing in terms of storytelling is also in that spirit. Some of our students for global and community health here at UCSC are going to be trying to convey stories with photographs that relate to health and health challenges. And I think they will often confront the same issue of a photograph that is not particularly sort of brilliant as a standard photograph for a photo competition, but yet it tells such a powerful story of suffering perhaps, or of overcoming illness. So I think what you've shared about these stories is really, it's going to be very inspiring for folks. One other thing I know that you're interested in is photographs as they relate to stories of sustainable development challenges and sort of environmental challenges of all kinds. And I wondered if there's anything there that you can share around the relationship between the photo and the photo story that captures the challenge that like one of the things photos can do is they focus on a small thing in the environment, but nevertheless it tells a bigger story of a wider climate crisis kind of thing.
So let me share two examples from different contexts, no longer at the border, but one from working with indigenous communities in Chiapas, Mexico, the Celtal indigenous community. And one of the projects we're doing there is trying to document and how to strengthen a program in agroecology that they're trying to do, trying to go back to traditional ways of cultivation that do not use chemicals and do not rely on agribusiness and seeds. And lack of rain is an important thing, regardless of the seeds. And so I can think of images of a dry pond, or of a not too great looking water source.
That conveys drought.
That is not a great picture, but that conveys in their mind the challenges of having water for their sustenance and for growing their food. And similarly, from that context, in Chiapas, Mexico, a picture of a chicken on the top of the frame. In fact, the chicken is beheaded. There's the bottom part of a chicken without the head, maybe because the chicken ran away when the person was trying to take a picture. But the majority of the picture is grass. So it's a rectangle of grass with a beheaded chicken on top. And what is the person talking about in that picture? It's talking about food security and the importance of small species, birds, chickens, ducks, as part of the backyard farm for food security.
Right.
And so a very bad picture of a beheaded chicken becomes an excellent representation of their quest for food security.
Oh, that's really good.
And similarly then, in yet a different context, in the Colombian Amazon, research that I was doing with a Fulbright grant in the Colombian Amazon, with indigenous communities in a very remote area of in eastern Colombia, where you can only get to by river or by plane. There's no roads. And where they take pictures of the river, and you would think, oh, the rivers in the Amazon, they're so beautiful and so pure. No, they're terrible, and they're contaminated, and they themselves have contributed to it by depleting the fish stocks, by overfishing, and by throwing all sorts of garbage, because now that they have more contact with Western civilization, it turns out that there's candy wrappers and cookie wrappers that end up in the river. And so they take a picture of a dirty river, which is not a great picture, but it is one that calls their alarm to look at this, where our environment is being depleted, and we are part of it, and we have it full of garbage, and we have overfished. And so it led to a conversation about conservation and water resources, and collection and management of garbage, and reduction of junk food from what the people bring to the store, and a whole conversation about nutrition and about the health of the river as the health of a community and the health of their nutrition, through a really bad picture of a polluted riverside.
That's a terrific example. I think with that, we'll draw things to a close, because it's such a powerful illustration of how you can tell a story with a photograph about the broader determinants of health.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what a lot of our students are going to be trying to do.
That's excellent. So I invite you to focus on the stories that come with it and not just on the pictures, because if you're looking for beautiful pictures only, you miss out on the opportunities about talking about what people want to talk about, even if it's with terrible pictures.
All right. So Professor Ricardo Gomez, thank you so much for joining me and for all these great insights. Thank you.
My pleasure.